Thanks, Dave. And while all of you are out there on the ground, we're beneath the stands at the Port Melbourne Social Club, and I'm here with one of the club's greatest legends, Frank Johnson. He was 5 times best and fairest here in the 50s. He was also recently named as a life member of the VFL, and Frank, that must have been a great thrill.
Yes, it was, Bev. Yeah, it was something unexpected completely, and I've got to thank the Port Melbourne Football Club for that. They presented me with a life membership of the club here at their general meeting last year, and of course they were the ones that sort of influenced the presentation here at Essendon on Wednesday.
Yeah, and well deserved too, because you had a wonderful career at Port Melbourne and you were a very distinguished VFL player. Talk a little bit about that era, because it was a very strong era.
Yes, well it was. It was an era where crowds were very big, very good. We used to play in front of 40,000 crowds in the finals down at St Kilda. They were always packed down there. The strong sides in those days were always Williamstown and Port Melbourne. Oakley was a very strong side in those days, and at various times we had sides like Moorabbin came through and won a premiership, beat us one year. Prahran was another strong side in those days. And I've always thought that the AFL never took enough players out of the VFA. I thought, I always thought that if I could go on at 27 and still play VFL football, which is now AFL, of course, I used to find it very hard to play VFA football. I mean, it was pretty tough, some of those players, and I always felt that there was more players in the VFA in those days who could have played AFL football or VFL. Than it really did.
Yeah. Well, how unusual though was it at the age of 27 to go into the big league?
I had actually given up. I had given up even playing football at that stage, because I was at Warrnambool for 2 years, and it didn't work out for me, employment-wise. And while we were there, my wife had twin boys. That's when the twin boys were born. And so we had 2 older girls, and well, you just needed a job, I was living on football money between seasons. That's how it was working out. So I had to come back to Melbourne, and I got a job, and I just happened to be working in a factory in South Melbourne when Ronnie Clegg walked in. And that's, we got talking, and that's how it sort of progressed from there.
Tell us about the night premiership that you played with South Melbourne.
Yes, well, that was always played out of the sides that didn't make the finals. It was the end of season competition. It was a knockout competition. And luckily that was the first year I played with South too. And we always, South always seemed to manage to get through to the finals, and I think they won the most number of night premierships at that stage. But it didn't last a heck of a long time. And
where did you play? Because there weren't many grounds with lights at that time.
No, well, it was still played at what is now the Bob Jane Stadium at South Melbourne, over near the lake. The lake, that was the Lake Oval, it was known as in those days. And and it was the only ground in Melbourne that had lights, so natural that they had to play night premiership.
And was it tough to play suddenly at night, or?
Well, yeah, a little bit. It was a bit hard to sort of watch the ball and keep your eye on the ball, because it was they only had 4 standards in those days, and nothing like what you see at the MCG and even all the grounds for that matter now. And we used to play with a white ball, which got very slippery, in the wet, and a little bit hard to handle.
Yeah. And you took some fantastic marks. There's a wonderful picture of you down here, just flying high.
Well, that was probably the strength of my game. My marking, my ability to jump, and I think luckily too, I was just before the big tall player came into the game as well. As I was finishing, there were players like. Well, Jeff Leake was playing in those days. Of course, he was about 6'6", and St Kilda got a fella in, and he was another 6'4" or 5 player, and they were just starting to move into the game, the big, taller type of players. And probably that was one of the advantages of me finishing at that stage, that I didn't have to counteract those fellas.
Although you're pretty tall yourself. Now, let's go back for a moment, if we can, to Port Melbourne and Williamstown. Great rivalry, those 2 teams, particularly in the era that you played in.
Williamstown, in that 8 years that we were in the grand final, beat us more than anybody else. So I think they might have been us 3 or 4 times. I know we did lose to Oakley and Prahran and Moorabbin. and the one that we did win was Yarraville.
So was it frustrating that you were in so many, yet just got the one grand final that you played in?
Yeah. I can't really sort of think back to see what my reactions were in those days, but I think you're always disappointed when you lose a grand final, and particularly from the supporters' point of view. Port Melbourne had unbelievable supporters, really did. People that just followed them from the time they were tots till they were 50s and 60-year-olders, you know, and it's always disappointing to lose a game, especially a final, for those people. Bad enough for the club, but I suppose you've been in the grand final 8 years in a row, and you can't say that's a failure, can you?
No, not at all.
I mean, Port Melbourne had a man by the name of Norm Goss in those days. I mean, his sons played at the club. And Norm was the best recruiting man I've ever come across. I mean, if our club was needed a player, he just seemed to have the ability to go out and just pick the right person for it. And that's what kept the club so strong. We had that good quality player all the time, but for some reason or other, when we got to a grand final, we just seemed to...
Couldn't get it across the line.
Yeah, we had the collywobbles on it.
Which you got rid of, though. Now, Frank, I know that you certainly had a really terrific reputation for lifting the standard of the VFA, VFL, but do you miss the larrikins of that era? There
were more characters in the game in those days, definitely. Like, you wouldn't see a Mopsy Fraser playing the game now. No. You know, he would be umpired out of the game now. Yes. And there was plenty of others around. I mean, Eric Guy went to St Kilda, and he was a real tough, you know. Yeah, I don't know too many people remember the incident where he sort of ran through Bobby Skilton one day. Yes. That's still one of the features that they show when it comes to the tough and rugged players in those days. Yeah, and there were a lot of very physically strong players, but it was more of a run shoulder bump, you know, hip and shoulder. Nowadays, there's too much of this, you know. The players don't seem to be prepared to sort of put the shoulder down and go in. They protect themselves by raising the arm, and that's why so many free kicks are played for these high tackles and so forth. You know, they don't seem to be prepared to, you know, use their body to sort of give a good solid bump.
Now, I hear congratulations are in order on Anzac Day. You're going to be walking down the aisle again. So it's wonderful.
It's something that I haven't been sort of advertising a great deal. But no, I've met a very, very lovely lady, and she's agreed to marry me. And, it's going to occur on Anzac Day.
Well, congratulations, and a great day to be doing it.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And I suppose more so with what's happening in the world at the moment, you know, with the wars going on and so forth. We're going to have a lot more members of the RSL when this is all over.
So a good day for reflection. Well, lovely to reflect with you. Thank you very much for spending some time with us.
Thank you very much, Bev.
And Phil, yes, one of the true gentlemen of the game, and not that we could say the same thing about you, but look, I'm off at the moment to go and have a quiet drink while you continue your hard work.